The air was thick with smoke and the stench of burning steel. In the distance, the scream of an MG-42 cut through the chaos, its sound echoing between the crumbling walls of a once peaceful French village. Somewhere, a Sherman tank's engine roared to life, gears grinding, treads clattering over cobblestones, slick with rain and blood. Private Elijah Brooks, 23 years old, crouched low in the shadow of a ruined building. His uniform was soaked, his hands trembling as they gripped his M1 carbine. Through the drifting smoke, he could see a young white lieutenant lying in the open street, blood spreading across his jacket. German soldiers were moving in. Everyone thought they knew what would happen that day. But what came next, no one could have imagined. 6 months earlier, the Louisiana sun was already high when Elijah awoke in the long wooden barracks. He could smell dust, diesel, and the faint scent of frying eggs from the mess hall. Training camp life was repetitive physical drills, maintenance work, and orders barked in a voice that never asked, only demanded. But for Elijah, the hardest part wasn't the physical strain. It was the look in certain officers' eyes, the kind that told him no matter how well he performed, they would only see the color of his skin. The 761st Tank Battalion, the Black Panthers, was his unit. An all-African-American armored battalion in a segregated army, fighting for a country that still denied them basic rights at home. They weren't allowed in white units. They weren't trusted with command. But Elijah had a dream: to fight, to prove his worth, to come home with honor. He remembered home, the dusty fields of Georgia, the smell of his mother's cornbread, his father's tired hands after long days in the fields. He remembered the day he left, how his younger sister clung to his leg, tears streaming down her face. Corporal James Red Carter, his closest friend in the battalion, broke the memory with a laugh. "You keep staring at that Sherman like she's gonna marry you." "Maybe she will," Elijah replied. "She's the only one in this army who don't care I'm black." Their first orders came soon after. They were shipping out to Europe. They trained harder, packed their gear, and boarded the transport. Ship days at sea turned into nights, filled with the low hum of engines and the distant cries of seagulls. They didn't know exactly where they were headed, but they knew it was war. France, 1944. The 761st was finally in combat. Their first mission was to push through a small French town occupied by German forces and secure a supply route. The morning was cold. Mist hung low over the fields. Inside their Sherman tank, Elijah could hear the steady breathing of Red in the driver's seat, the quiet prayers of Sergeant Davis in the turret. The sound of battle arrived before the enemy came into view. Distant artillery, the staccato burst of machine guns, the occasional scream dot as they rolled into the outskirts of the town. The smell of gunpowder hit them. A German anti-tank gun opened fire. The first shell slammed into a building ahead, showering the street with bricks and glass. Red swerved hard, treads grinding, and Elijah loaded the 75mm cannon. The recoil slammed through his body as he fired, the shell tearing into the enemy position. Civilians huddled in doorways, eyes wide with fear. They had seen armies come and go. The uniforms changed, but the destruction stayed the same. Hours turned into a blur of orders, shots, and near misses. They lost one of their own, Private Harris, caught in a sniper's scope while crossing the street. Elijah felt the weight of it. Harris had been just 19 that night. They camped outside the town, the wreckage of battle still fresh in their minds. The stars overhead seemed colder somehow. The turning point weeks later, they were deep inside enemy territory. The weather had turned brutal. Icy winds cut through their jackets, and snow crunched under their boots. The 761st was assigned to support an infantry push in a heavily fortified area. The attack began at dawn. The German defense was fierce. Mortar fell like rain, and every alley seemed to hide an ambush. It was during this chaos that Elijah saw him, Lieutenant Walker, separated from his squad, bleeding, trapped in the middle of an open street. German soldiers were moving in from both sides. Elijah knew the order. Tank crews were to stay inside and cover infantry from range. But something in him refused to watch a man die like that. No matter the color of his skin or the stripes on his shoulder, he leapt from the Sherman, sprinting through the smoke. Bullets cracked past his ears. He grabbed Walker under the arms, dragging him toward cover. A German shouted, and Elijah's carbine barked in reply. When they reached the alley, Walker looked at him, eyes wide with shock. "You deal with the 761st? "Yeah," Elijah panted. "Now let's get you out of here." Winter tightened its grip on Europe. The Battle of the Bulge had begun, the largest and bloodiest battle The US would fight in World War II. The 761st was thrown into the freezing forests of Belgium, tasked with holding a vital road against a German armored assault. For days, they fought in blizzards, their tanks barely starting in the cold. Food was scarce, ammunition scarcer, but they held. On the fifth day, the enemy came in force. Panthers half-tracks, infantry by the hundreds. The ground shook as artillery opened up, snow and earth flying high into the air. Inside the Sherman, Elijah's hands moved automatically. Load, fire, load, fire. Each shot roared like thunder, each hit sending shards of steel into the winter sky. A German shell struck nearby, flipping another Sherman on its side. Flames engulfed it. Elijah saw men he'd trained with vanish in seconds. But they didn't break. They fought until the last shell, until their guns glowed hot, until the German line faltered. When the smoke cleared, the road was still theirs. Bodies lay frozen in the snow, friend and foe alike. The war would rage on for months, but that day became part of the 761st's legend. They had fought not just the enemy in front of them, but the prejudice behind them. Elijah Brooks would survive the war. He would return home to a country still divided, but he would walk with his head high, knowing he had earned his place in history. He never called himself a hero, but those who fought beside him knew the truth. History may change its clothing, but the truth beneath often stays the same, and in the darkest of battles, courage has no color.